Hello, Alberta. My name is Tyler Butler. I'm the social media manager here at ATB, and I'm here today with Shannon Pestun, ATB's Director of Women's Entrepreneurship. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Shannon just wrapped up the Build Her Business campaign. We're going to talk all about it today, and she's also working to reimagine banking for women. So I wanted to jump in and give people a sense of what the Build Her Business campaign actually was. It just drew to a close last week. Do you think you can give me a quick overview of what happened?
Yeah, most definitely. The Build Our Business competition was an opportunity to encourage more women from across Alberta to launch a crowdfunding campaign. And crowdfunding is interesting because it's one area where women seem to outperform men when it comes to raising funds. So we launched a crowdfunding campaign for women that incorporated role models, so women who have gone through ATB Booster before, that had an education component to it, as well as a friendly competition to help encourage women to celebrate each other, support each other, not feel alone in the process, and have some fun. So it was a chance for them to start and grow their companies through a really unique avenue.
And we noticed that in the Facebook group, that sense of community, of being together, not alone, was really evident. Can you talk about why was this a competition that felt like a community, and what's the importance of community for women entrepreneurs?
Yeah, we were really interested to see how this community would go. At first, we thought we would just have it open to the participants in the competition. But what we realized was there were women who weren't part of the competition but still wanted to follow along and see, is this something that I can do? And a community was really formed of women who were supporting each other, elevating each other, even up until the very last final competition. They were cheering each other on. They solved problems in the community, so if somebody wasn't sure where to go to get video, other people would jump in. When they were having problems, feeling like they were just overwhelmed, again, comments would come in just as supportive to say, you've got this, and just a really encouraging voice. So kind of interesting that it was a competition, but it felt very like a very friendly type of competition.
That's right. So, but it was a competition. So who was the winner? Can you tell us a little bit about who won?
Our winner was Amy Rondeau, who has Curvy Collective. And Curvy Collective is a company that's trying to change the way curvaceous women are able to buy clothes online, and a really fashionable line. So her campaign was all about trying to set herself up to have an online website. So Amy was able to accomplish that, and she took the big title.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you, and you touched on it already, but why is crowdfunding specifically, how does crowdfunding lend itself to women who are trying to start a business?
Well, typically what we see is that women do face a barrier when it comes to accessing capital for their companies. And somebody gave me an analogy a long time ago that when you're looking at women's businesses, while there are many that go into high growth, a lot of them are the sort of the nuts and bolts of Main Street. And those companies aren't always the easiest to access capital for. So you're testing ideas through crowdfunding, maybe you're starting a fashion line or something that's not as capital intensive, or you're trying to see if there would be a market for your product. That's why crowdfunding tends to work very well for this space. And because it's a very social community, women have very strong social ties and know how to bring people along for their story. So that's why it tends to work better for women.
I wanted to talk a little more about those barriers that you're seeing for women who are trying to start a business. What are those barriers in your view?
I would say there's three primary barriers. So the first would be access to financial capital. So that would be your startup funds or your funds to grow the company. The second piece of it would be what we call human capital or entrepreneurial capital. So that would be how to run a successful business, your financial acumen, how to write a marketing plan, a social media plan. So it's that whole piece that helps you be the best entrepreneur that you can possibly be. The third capital barrier would be what we call social barrier. While we have many amazing women entrepreneurs across the province, we're still lacking in the role models. You can't be what you can't see. We've often heard that. And so social capital is very important, giving women a sense of community so that they can say, hey, this woman's in this industry and I want to go down that path as well. And it gives an avenue for women to connect and learn from one another. So those are the three barriers that we're seeing in the women's entrepreneurship space.
One of those role models is you, I think.
Oh.
You're a role model for me.
Oh, thanks, Tyler.
Can you tell me how you started to recognize these barriers?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. My career at ATB actually started in marketing almost 10 years ago. And when I was in marketing, I really wanted to understand the banking side of the business. And I come from an entrepreneurial family, and I grew up in a family that had a small business. And I wanted to be able to connect to who ATB's customer was. And so I went into the lending space, and I became a relationship manager with business and agriculture. And it was in that capacity, working with both men and women entrepreneurs, that I started to see some differences. The conversations were a little bit different. Where I felt that I was adding value as a banker was different as well. And then I started to just kind of make note of these changes. And over the years, you start pulling back the layers a little bit. And what I thought was just men and women communicate differently became a much bigger piece, where I started to suddenly see the barriers that women were facing. And in that, I knew that I was going to have a role to play in helping to change that story.
And that role is Director of Women's Entrepreneurship. What does a day in your life look like? What do you do in your role?
Yeah, that's a great question, because no day, is the same. And right now, what is pretty amazing about this opportunity is that in many ways, I feel like I have a whiteboard in front of me. It's trying to really get to the heart of the problem and ask really great questions and dive deep to say, what are these barriers, and how do we as a bank, as a financial institution, play a role in helping women overcome these barriers? When we talked earlier about the barriers being access to financial capital, entrepreneurial capital, and social capital, as a bank, we have all of that. And so our responsibility to help women, if these are their barriers, we do have that responsibility to help them to start and grow their businesses.
What challenges or obstacles have you faced so far in your journey in your role as Director of Women's Entrepreneurship?
It's a great question, because I think what I'm learning is that anytime you're dealing with gender issues or there's issues around diversity and inclusion, one of the biggest challenges is that we recognize that there's problems that we're all trying to solve, and different people have a different way of addressing the problems or seeing the problems, and those who want to solve the problem also come at it from a very different light as well. But I think it's just the banking system has never really had to look at this before, so you have a history of hundreds of years of it being as it was, and maybe today it's just that the marketplace doesn't represent where banking started, and that's a transition. So that my barrier is just probably mostly cultural, and being courageous enough to say, we're going to make a meaningful difference here.
I've worked with you on projects. Anyone who's worked with you knows how passionate you are about your work. What are some of the things you're doing outside of ATB? I think you have a lot on the go right now.
Well, I try and get myself involved in as many events that women are participating in, just so that I can listen as best as I can. So most of my learning comes from being around the entrepreneurial space and in that ecosystem. A particular, I guess, excitement for me is that I am on the women's expert panel for the federal government. So that is really going to give an opportunity for me to understand the Canadian landscape and what the financial institution's role is in breaking these barriers and helping to advise us on a much larger platform in terms of what we need to do to advance and support women entrepreneurs.
So I wanted to keep going on the topic of women entrepreneurs. Let's say someone has a great business idea. I wanted to get to the very basics and say, what's the best way for a woman with a great business idea to get started?
Yeah, getting started, I mean, there's so many great avenues. We've obviously got our entrepreneur centers, which are a great starting place. We've got some wonderful strategists that are there to help you start looking at that business plan. Crowdfunding, again, proved to be a really great avenue to test your market, test your product. And most businesses fail because you don't have that validation, or you think you've got a great idea, but is there an actual buyer there for that product? And so coming in to talk to us, talking to other entrepreneurs, going to entrepreneurial meetups is another great way, again, where role models come into play, because people can help you solve or help you find a way to make money from trying to solve a problem. So there's a lot of different avenues, but I would start at the ATB Entrepreneur Center if I was a woman entrepreneur.
Me too. And validating your idea, that's another place where crowdfunding can be really helpful.
Most definitely, and we did see that from the Build Her Business crowdfunding campaign. And if you're bringing something new to market, if it's not going to work, we often say that you want to fail fast. You want to know what is that minimum viable product. So, do you have to pivot? Do you have to be agile? So crowdfunding is a really, really great way to get that understanding.
You have your own experience with entrepreneurship. Can you tell me how that's informed your work?
Well, I mean, I guess growing up in a family that owns a small business, I know how much that business meant to our family and how it changed the dynamic of our family life as well. My parents were both very active in the business, and I was in school, but in the summers I was the AP and the AR clerk, and back in school I'd play the janitor, I'd play all roles in the company. So I know what a business means to an owner, and I know how much heart and soul goes into that. So there's the personal side of it. And of course, working with entrepreneurs and seeing the success stories, and also being present even for the hard times. It's a very personal journey. You can't isolate the person from the business ever. And so my connection to it is just a very, I guess, empathetic feeling of what it's like to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that experience must be invaluable to help you relate to entrepreneurs you're meeting. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they need to play all those roles in their company.
Well, they do. I mean, they're the chief marketing officer or the HR or the finance person. I mean, they do play multiple roles. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge for entrepreneurs, is that they do have to play all these roles, and there's only so much time, and you really do risk burnout if you're trying to play all those roles for a long period of time.
I wanted to talk about some of the specific barriers for women in banking. So do you think what are the best ways that we can improve the experience of banking for women, and what are some of the barriers that they're facing?
Well, some of our customers, it's a lot of the research that we show is that women can feel very intimidated by just walking into a bank, and there's a lot of different reasons for that, but we're trying to understand why that is and how we make a meaningful change in that regard. And I think starting with our people and sharing the conversation, sharing why the strategy is so important to all team members and the difference that we can make for somebody who walks through our doors at ATB, I think that's the best place that we can start to change that experience.
You shared a great anecdote with us earlier about things women might rather do than go into a bank.
Oh my goodness. Well, there was a Merrill Lynch stat, and the stat read that 61% of women would rather talk about their own death than finances. And that kind of tells you that the system is broken, if that's the way women really feel. And I mean, I'm kind of guilty too. I don't really like talking about my finances either. But a lot of it, if we don't understand and we don't have that financial literacy, then you don't want to talk about it because you feel judged, and money is a very emotional piece. So I think that's largely why women don't want to talk about it.
I want to talk optimistically about the future. 5 years down the line, what do you hope the landscape is like for women in banking?
Well, I can look at it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, but you take a look at things like where the government strategy is, and that's really to double the number of women entrepreneurs in Canada by 2025. So quite an ambitious goal, but it's more than just supporting startups. It's also helping women to grow their companies, helping them export. And so I would love to see us move the dial on how many women are exporting, how many women are taking their growth from that small to medium-sized company to a mid to high growth company. And giving women a sense of real empowerment to follow their dreams, to dream big, to encourage them to go into innovation. I think that the STEM industry is going to play a very critical role in what the future landscape looks like for Alberta entrepreneurs. And in Alberta, we are meeting, or beating, I should say, or exceeding the national average when it comes to innovation. So we've got some strength here in this province, and now we just have to unharness that full potential.
What's next for Build Her Business? Is this a campaign that's going to run again?
Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, the feedback that we've had so far has been really great, and it was the first year that we attempted to do this and wanted to see what the outcomes would be. And I think that the feedback we're receiving from our audience, and I had the pleasure of being at the Alberta Women Entrepreneurs Awards last night, and what was really great for me was that 4 of our competitors are now in the running for Alberta Women Entrepreneurs nominations for Achievement Awards. And so the quality of entrepreneurs that are coming into this program it's a high quality entrepreneur, women who are very, very driven. And so I would love to see us be able to do this program and see more women go through, and let's keep growing and starting these businesses. Yeah.
And what's next for Shannon? You have a lot on the go. What's the next big project?
Oh, that's a great question. This is a tough one. Just really strengthening our core as an organization and setting us up for success so that we can change that experience. To me, this is not a marketing campaign. This isn't a Go Pink strategy that we're looking at women and label it for women and it's going to feel different. If women don't come into our branch and don't have a different experience, then we'll be missing the mark in this strategy. And so what's next for me is really just to keep us all listening to the needs of women and really just trying to build a better experience where we help women to break all those barriers that we talked about earlier.
Is there one thing that has really surprised you in your work around women's entrepreneurship?
Surprised me? No. If there was a surprise, it would probably be just how complex this really is. Sometimes I feel that the more I know, the more I realize I don't know, and I have gone down several rabbit holes over the course of the past couple of years, but all very good learning. So the surprise for me would just be how broad the issues are and knowing where we can actually make a difference. But what has been amazing is watching the support that has come from our team members and how grassroots this is and just how much support is coming from members from across ATB to say, how do I be part of this difference?
Shannon, I want to thank you for coming in today. Thank you for
having
sharing
me
with
and giving
us
us this chance to have this conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.
Bye.